Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are doing our State of Natural for 2021 for the first half of the year presentation today. We will be going over what channels have been doing in the first half of 2021 as we kind of re-emerge from the pandemic. How have these better for you products compared to over last year and the year before? What product innovation, which was kind of stalled due to the pandemic, which innovations and product types have taken off? What types of trends are we seeing and where do we think they're going to continue? And we're going to also look at some retail insights as the restaurants reopen and that share of the American stomach is really up for grabs. What can retailers do to maintain the gains that they made when restaurants were closed? I am Scott Dicker. I am a marketing data analyst at Spins. I do a lot of the insights and trends presentations, and I am lucky enough to be joined by two of our subject matter experts, Jeff Crumpton, who is a senior manager of retail reporting, and Simon Cutts, who is our director of retail partners. Thanks for joining us, guys. And with that, we will get right to it, and Jeff will take us through some of the high-level trends going on.
All right, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it. As we enter into mid-2021, let's review three key channels to get an idea of what is growing and who is growing. We'll start with natural enhanced, regional, and independent grocery channels, both of which are proprietary to Spins, and then the conventional multi-outlet, which is powered through our partnership with IRI. We'll also segment out each of the three channels into three separate groups: the total of all products being sold in the store, only those that are natural, and then only those that are specialty or have a wellness focus. Finally, we'll make a comparison on how each of these segments is performing based on comparisons to last year and then comparisons to 2 years ago, so that we can factor out that COVID bump, which allows for a better read on the overall performance of these channels and these segments. It's important to understand that the declines that we see at 24 weeks versus year ago are really entirely normal given the incredibly high volume of sales that we saw mid-year 2020. Therefore, the comparison to 2 years can actually be more helpful and actually place this into some proper context. If we first look at all products being sold across the three channels, regional still has a slight advantage over the other two channels, but each are performing very strongly and really only a few points separate them. Natural products are performing exceptionally well in both multi-outlet and regional grocery, with the natural channel lagging just a bit. We've talked about how specialty and wellness products have performed really well over the last year in a lot of our different presentations that we've given. And we continue to see that bear out with both regional and multi-outlet neck and neck at about 22% versus 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting here, Jeff. When we look at how much of the gains were really kept over from that 2 years ago, I'm surprised that it isn't even more of a decline when you see something like 21% for specialty products and regional, that they were only declining 2.5% year over year. That really shows that those regional and independent grocers are sticking to those neighborhood stores.
Yeah, and I think it also really sort of highlights the fact that the regional and independent grocery continues to be a place where innovation occurs, where we see those types of products entering into the market. And certainly over the course of the last year, with COVID and people cooking at home so frequently, these kind of like global flavors that really kind of fall within the specialty and wellness products area really kind of proliferates across the entire store. So it really continues to hold up really strongly in those regional and independent groceries.
Yeah, and then one last comment before we move on. Just looking at this year so far in the conventional channel, such a high percentage of the growth has really come from those natural and specialty wellness products. And we knew that that's kind of the trend that it was heading, but it's pretty interesting to see just how stark the growth is over there.
Yeah. Agreed.
Is that just conventional catching up with natural? I mean, is it truly a matter of a smaller base? Because it feels like one of those, elephants in the room, the fact that natural is growing at a faster rate at conventional versus the traditional natural.
I think part of that, Simon, really is, folks certainly have cut down on the number of trips to stores, over the course of the last year. I think that probably is a bit of a lingering effect of just COVID shopping that we know today, these kind of patterns that we've seen over the course of the last year really becoming second nature to us. I think that, we've all talked about it, kind of independently, but I do think that we're going to start to see with some of the new product that we see coming on the market, knowing the role that natural enhanced as well as regional plays, that customers are still going to be going back into those stores to find those new products. So I imagine that while the trips are really down and a lot of folks may be going to the conventional multi-outlet at the moment, we probably on the back half of the year will see natural and regional start to catch back up.
Great. Let's keep this moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Now if we look at this next slide, we're going to look at the same segments of natural, specialty wellness, and conventional. And here we're looking at 13 individual quad week periods, which equal 1 calendar year. You can see above that 2 stacked bars, one blue, one orange, blue representing a year over year, and the orange representing a comparison to 2 years ago. The blue line, if we look at that from left to right, we can see that the growth remains fairly consistent until we get to about March of 2021. That's because of those cycling rates of growth that we saw because of stockpiling in 2020. But we see a really nice V-shaped recovery as growth starts to climb back into positive territory through 2021. And if we go on to that orange line at the very top, this really helps us kind of understand and level out the volatility that we've seen over the last year and does give us some insights into that longer range performance. And while there was a little dip in March and April, that growth rate is pretty stable given that longer view. We can see it, finishing up in June at about 14%. And that's pretty consistent with what we've seen even, in 2020. So that's, I think that just shows exactly the type of growth and the type of stability that we're seeing. And if I draw your attention to the stacked bars at the bottom, not surprising that most of the products do fall within the conventional positioning group, with specialty and wellness, as well as natural, rounding out the remaining. But you can see that some of those specialty products in the pink are starting to take a little bit greater share from those conventional products. But overall, we're seeing continued really good performance here at mid-year. If we move into the next slide, we're going to take now, a look at the same positioning groups that we did, that natural, that specialty, that conventional, and we're going to put it into a department kind of viewpoint. Here, we're looking at a combination of both the natural enhanced and conventional multi-outlets. So what do we see here? We see first that over-the-counter medicines are still presenting really strong growth for both natural and specialty products, even though they represent a slightly lower volume. That body care for natural and specialty wellness continue to reinforce the fact that shoppers return to the office, and as events open outside the home, that we see consumers and shoppers prioritize their purchase of those items, led really by natural. Frozen items continue to be top performers across all the product types, but they're really led by natural and specialty. So that sort of specialty trend certainly holds true. Conventional produce has a slight advantage over natural position products. Some of that can be really attributed to supply chain and other factors. And then if we think about kind of natural products, it's the alcohol, it's the pet products, vitamins and supplements that are really outperforming the other segments. And if we think about those specialty and wellness, it's grocery, it's refrigerated, it's general merch, it's body care, and it's the herbs that are really seeing increases in specialty and wellness relative to natural and conventional.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and we're going to dive into kind of some of the specific trends for most of these departments. But one thing that's really interesting to call out this, the natural positioning group for something like alcohol, it's a category that, hardly existed up until very recently. And this is a growth that we're going to continue to see. And it's really led by a lot of these, low calorie and innovation products that we're going to get into a little more. That's something that really caught my eye.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know now that we've seen some top line data, we're going to get into the actual trends. So Jeff, take us through, one of the big trends and things that people are becoming much more aware of is the different types of ownerships for these businesses. So Jeff, you want to start to take us through what the data shows there?
Yeah, absolutely. Really this is brought to us, we're using SPIN's data, but really it's a lot of work that our friends at KHE are doing around really identifying BIPOC, LGBTQ+, women-owned communities. And then also we're using our certified B Corp attribute to kind of get at some of the data here. And really, we have really witnessed increased visibility for these types of brands. And we see that shoppers trust and prioritize purchases that do align to their own deeply held beliefs and their need and desire to really support equity across these types of brands. Again, these are sales increases from the end of 2020, and we're also looking at mid-year 2021, and we're looking at that 1 year and 2 year comp so that we can kind of get a greater idea of what's going on. And the short story is that each of these show strong double-digit growth for the 2 year trend, with BIPOC and women-owned really leading the charge. You can see that there is some softness in some of the numbers at mid-year, that 613 number. There's a couple of negatives, again, not unexpected. But if we look at something like, BIPOC minority-owned, they're 40% growth at, compared to 2 years ago. If we looked at the end of the year, they're at 44%. So that's a trend that really does hold up really well. And women-owned too, very similar story. And it's really that's kind of certified B Corp. It's the lowest of the four. And even they are, reporting really strong double-digit growth, which really just illustrates that shoppers are really, they want to make sure that they're supporting brands and supporting equity in the face of, what we've been through in the last year and all of these, kind of missions that we find really important, as we kind of find ourselves in 2021.
Yeah, and we found that like B Corp has been something, especially in different pockets of the store, that has really played a larger role, as a lot of these brands, they do a great job of, highlighting their, the diversity in their ownership. But this is a way, if people are just looking online or on the shelf, something like certified B Corp is, a great way for people to align themselves with mission-based companies. So yeah, this is all really great to see.
Yeah, what a great place to see the growth. I mean, shoppers are supporting with their dollars, and I have to say, there's not a retailer I'm working with out there who's not asking me more about this right here, and how they can support these groups more, and what we can do more to help bring it to light. So great to see the growth here. If there was ever a great eye chart with such positive growth, it's this one.
For sure. And now, after getting into some of those top line trends, let's get into some of the individual trends that we've been seeing. And so something that we've been talking about a lot recently is kind of these snacks that used to be junk food. Companies are really, quote unquote, cleaning them up, making them more adaptable to different diets, and shifting them to kind of have a better for you lens, where they still can be indulgences, but they're not necessarily. And so we're seeing things, just an eye-popping chart is over the past 24 weeks compared to last year, we see plant-based position products. So these are traditionally animal-based products, and these are kind of that plant-based alternative. So such high growth really across the board in every channel. And it's led by a lot of products. One of the ones that we're looking here is for like vegan jerky, for example. We're seeing a lot of parity now with the flavors as animal-based jerkies, as well as we're seeing more and more companies putting in protein to make it more nutritionally aligned with the animal-based products, which is one of the last pieces that was kind of missing when people were looking at some of those snacks. Then also taking a look at like Good Crisp, for example. I know this isn't necessarily one of their newer products, but making vitally clean snacks, so that's without artificial ingredients, is so important to have that clean label. And also another thing that we're seeing a lot of companies do in the Good Crisp is one of them is sustainable palm oil. So sustainability always on the mind, looking for ways that will have positive impact, going even back to our last slide, as well as just cleaning it up and having it fit every different lifestyle. So much more is being put into what used to be considered niche. Things aren't really made for that overall mass now. They're really meeting consumers where they are in the snacking category.
I laughed. I saw plant-based crackers the other day, and that was the call out on the package, and it made me wonder what crackers aren't plant-based. But it was Moonshot. I tried them; they were absolutely fantastic. And I'm like, okay, this is a fantastic cracker, which is identifying itself as plant-based, but then also brings more messaging, more attributes to the table, in terms of being a climate-friendly product. So interesting to see more, categories coming into plant-based and doing something different.
Yeah, and a lot of it is not even just the actual core ingredient of the product. We're seeing things that used to be flavors, like a cheese flavor, now here and there having a vegan option. So a plant-based alternative in the flavoring, and not even something like you said, a cracker, which isn't animal-based to begin with most of the time. We're seeing a lot more of that flavor shift as well.
Nice.
One of the other trends that we're really seeing is this world flavors. And in the beverage category especially, we're seeing this kind of take note as these functional beverages, and also just kind of unique and special. So a few of the brands we've highlighted here is Camino, which uses Japanese fruit juice. And they also highlight, regenerative agriculture and sourcing locally. So sourcing locally is, again, something that's really often highlighted as a driver to the brand. Sanzo is an interesting one. They have Asian flavors. They noticed that a lot of the Asian flavors were lagging behind some of the other sodas over here, with still being loaded with sugar and preservatives and not having that alternative options. So Sanzo made these options that didn't have any added sugar or preservatives. And then a type of beverage that I've been keeping my eye on, is tepache, which is a fermented beverage made from pineapple rinds. And this has been a Mexican staple. And I'm wondering if this is going to be finally that fermented beverage that takes a share of the fermented beverage away from kombucha, or just expands the audience. But we've seen a lot of other fermented beverages come out recently without taking a major hold outside of kombucha. So I think tepache has a chance to do so. Going into the more functional space and some supplement categories, as well as energies, nootropics. So these have been around for a little while now, but they've been really taking hold and growing even more. So we're seeing a lot of blends. So a lot of companies are turning to a blend of different nootropic ingredients for kind of a synergistic effect. We're seeing a lot more smart energy products. So where a lot of energy products used to be based on physical performance, we're seeing a lot more where they're focused on your mental performance as well. And I actually had one of these smart energy drinks this morning before my workout. So it's kind of that mind-body alignment of incorporating some nootropic ingredients with a traditional energy set. In most cases, something that's caffeinated. And we're seeing a lot, some of the ingredients that we're seeing do well are phosphatidylserine, DMAE, Bacopa, and these are products that have a health focus of cognitive health. And we do see them growing a ton in MULO and regional, and it's actually down a little bit in the natural channel. And this is for supplements, again, with a cognitive health focus. I do think that that's going to calibrate a little bit. I expect to see some more growth in natural as they get that next wave of innovation. And we're seeing it really in full swing in MULO and regional right now. So yeah, so that's about nootropics. It's one of the nootropic ingredients that I didn't mention but was on the slide is mushrooms. And mushrooms are really having a banner time here. So we're seeing mushrooms as a very versatile ingredient. So it used to be, obviously, you could just eat mushrooms, and then they became supplements, but we're seeing them as a functional ingredient in a lot of food and beverage categories. So when we take a look at the grocery, refrigerated, and frozen departments, we're seeing a lot of growth within the food and beverage. And this is with an added functional ingredient led by cordyceps, but also maitake, reishi, and chaga. Cordyceps, of course, is used for endurance and bronchial dilating, I believe. And so we're seeing things like that incorporated into products for a functional ingredient. Cordyceps coffee is up over 70% in our innovation cross channel that's natural plus regional. We're seeing even in frozen desserts, something that I did not expect to have mushrooms in my frozen novelty bar, but Dream Pops has this as a product. I actually tried it when we were over at the Sweets and Snacks Expo. That's a great frozen dessert that incorporates lines of mushroom, which is usually used for that cognitive function.
It's exciting to see this one. It's like this trend, I feel like, came out of the health and wellness, the natural living vitamin supplement department area. And I was running grocery at the time, and we just didn't have any awesome new innovation coming out of this mushroom category in grocery. But, it's like I'm seeing GT's came out with a great GT's Alive cider that is mushroom based. That's just, it comes down to the fact that it's delicious and it offers all these great benefits. So cool to see this trend coming over to grocery and growing.
Yeah, and especially, mushroom coffee, it does have some caffeine, but much less than, traditional coffee, but it's also, promoting immune benefits, which of course is high on consumers' mind. And also people who might want to be, shying away from stronger coffee products, but still like the taste. So that a lot of mushroom coffees, we're even seeing some like mushroom protein powder blends. So it's really finding a home anywhere, and it'll be interesting to see, where it goes to next. We've seen those mushroom jerkies when we go back and talk about snacks. But I think it's really, the sky is the limit. And in that regard, as we go to the next slide and talk about some natural cosmetics, one of the things that really caught my eye, because of course we were talking about mushrooms, is Cocoa Kind, which uses mushrooms as in their cosmetics product as a way to get some antioxidant benefits. So, we go from the supplement category, like Simon was talking about, to food, and even in cosmetics for mushrooms. So it's pretty remarkable that you could use them in everything. And I think we find that in a lot of products that start out as supplements for functional ingredients, then they make their way to food, and then some of them even make their way to body care. So we've seen that with CBD in the past. We've seen that with some other antioxidants as well. So I think that's a great way to identify trends just in general. I know I'm supposed to be talking about natural cosmetics, but just as a general thing, a lot of times these trending ingredients identify themselves first as supplements, then to food, and then into all other kinds of products. But when we're looking at these natural cosmetics, one of the really interesting things to see is especially in the natural and regional channel, which we know is where a lot of the innovation starts, the growth of naturally positioned cosmetics is really accelerating as we get, from 52 weeks to 24 weeks to 12 weeks, which means that people are a lot more aware of the types of products that they're choosing to get when they go to the store and they get to look at them in person. These are the ones that they are choosing. And also, cosmetics in general is having a nice rebound year with people, not necessarily having to wear masks anymore and going out and socializing again. People are putting on more makeup. And then another brand we wanted to highlight was Mad Hippie that highlights plant-based and cruelty-free. And a lot of these things, they've been around, and they're still driving a lot of the growth. And of course, just like the mushrooms, this is something from food and beverage that's really transferred over, that kind of halo of better for you, better for the environment, better for a lot of things. Taking a step into the pet department, there's been this big shift over where it's really pet parents. They're no longer pet owners. They're pet parents, and they buy for their pets just like they would buy from themselves. So we're looking here at our neighborhood pet channel, because we know for pet products, this is really where the innovation starts. People go to their local pet retailers. And so we see the first thing over the first half of the year is that we see more and more people are feeling comfortable shopping at these pet stores in person. Whereas during the pandemic, a lot of that went to big box stores as people limited their trips to the grocery store to of course, just do one trip. They weren't going to a lot of these specialty stores, but we're seeing people are going back to them. The growth is accelerating. A few of the products that we're seeing, toppers and mixers. I know I recently started buying one of these for my cats, one cat, and this is a really popular product. Freeze dried is really huge. We see Primal is the example on the slide that we see, and this is how pet parents could kind of get that benefit of a raw diet, and it has a longer shelf life as well. And then functional ingredients that we see popular in humans are now popular in pets. Things like omega-3, things like glucosamine and collagen. People are buying for their pets the same way they're buying for themselves. So they want their pets to have every possible way to get, brain support, heart function, joint support. A lot of people took their dogs for extra walks as they work from home. So they're looking for joint support for them. And so it's really those supplements now are really taking off, these freeze-dried, specialized diets, limited ingredient. And then as Stella and Chewy showed us, adding functional ingredients to food and treats is becoming more common. So things like probiotics for digestion has become really popular for pet food as well as people food.
Yeah, this has been a category that, typically in grocery retail, it just doesn't, it's been a convenience category. But with all this growth and these new emerging trends, it's one retailer should really paying more attention to. Innovation is driving a lot of this growth. So if you're not cracking into this category, it's one really to take a fresh look at.
Definitely. So I alluded to this earlier as we were going over the top line department sales, but Alcohol continues to be really a hub for innovation. It's one of the departments that did the best over the pandemic. Had a lot of, trying new things. Bars were closed. People were willing to try a lot of new drinks at home, and that's really carried over. And with that, one of the trends that keeps popping out is this kind of 100 calorie or less ready to drinks that aren't beer. So we're seeing that's of course led by a lot of hard seltzer products, things like San Juan seltzers. Again, going back, women founded, zero sugar, so zero carb, things that we're seeing in functional beverage that may have not been quite as important a lot to the beer drinker. We're seeing these ready to drink products go that extra mile. And when we're talking about naturally positioned, a lot of the innovation, so organic ready to drink products is something that's coming to market a lot more. Gluten-free and something like Green Bar, they're promoting their sustainability efforts. They plant a tree per bottle sold, promoting that they're carbon negative. So again, alcohol companies they're not missing out on that innovation from beverage. They're actually participating in it and making them both functional and mission-based as well. And then Flying Embers, they've been one of the core natural, one of the original core natural alcohol brands. And they have their hard kombuchas and also their low-calorie hard seltzers. And then just kind of putting a cap onto the clean label for functional beverages. We're seeing a lot of these other categories. Shelf-stable functional beverage in natural and regional has both grown by double digits over the first half of the year. In a lot of these categories, in refrigerated tea and coffee as well. A couple of the brands I just wanted to highlight are Poppy, which is stevia sweetened. So again, we're seeing a lot of this sweetener alternatives to sugar. And it also adds cider vinegar as a way to support digestion. And of course, with the clean label, no artificial ingredients. And also Rowdy Mermaid, which is a tonic that they have aimed at providing a remedy for a variety of functions, and they eliminating everything artificial as well. And with that, let's kick it over. Simon, tell us please what's happening in retail.
Hey, some really cool things. You touched on a whole lot of plant-based trends, and what I see retailers looking for is, what I'm calling a total store solution. And it's really capitalizing on all the opportunity gaps within plant-based. It used to be plant-based was over in the dairy and it was over in the freezer, right? And it was, okay, I've got 2 doors for veggie burgers, I'm good. And you can't look at it that way anymore. Shoppers are really looking for plant-based in different day parts, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, beverages, makeup, you name it. Plant-based has just crossed over the whole store. One really sharp retailer out there asked us to pull together, can you give us some analysis on plant-based everything? We don't want to look at it as a frozen category, a refrigerated category anymore. Really, how are we performing across the board? And it really showed first off, they were performing exceptionally well, but then it showed great opportunities, within some pockets. So, with plant-based, just rise up to that 30,000 foot level, if you will, and look down at the store and just start thinking about different day parts, different usage occasions, and different opportunities. And there's tons out there, and shoppers are willing to, make it a point of difference to come to your store if you've got more of those solutions. So that's a big one going on right now. It's just plant-based on a much larger level.
Hey, Simon, when you see retailers that are having a lot of success for this, are they merchandising the plant-based as like the form with the animal analog, or are they still kind of splitting it out?
Yeah, yeah, no, great question. Um, I, Creating the destination really seems to be the winning solution out there. Meaning, dedicate space within dairy specifically to highlight plant-based. Dedicate space specifically within your meat department to highlight that plant-based. It's not a store within a store. It's a category within a category, if you will. And that seems to be the absolute way to call attention to it right now and to get shoppers understanding, oh, I didn't realize they had, plant-based X, Y, or Z because they weren't necessarily shopping that subcategory before. So, no, great question.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth highlighting. I know we've talked about this in the past, but it's not just vegans, right? So when we look at burgers, which is one of the more mature categories, people, they go to that burger section because they're looking for burgers. And the same person who might buy, the grass-fed beef burger might try some of these plant-based burgers as well. So I think that's goes right along with what you were saying, Simon.
Totally. And, households are mixed with, call it, flexitarians, vegans, people seeking gluten-free. There's a varied makeup of households out there. So it's hard to say, the shopper fits into this bucket. People are looking for options and solutions, and flavor is no longer a big barrier. You touched on vegan jerky earlier. A few years ago, oh man, it was not great. But now there's flavor and texture has improved greatly, and it's no longer a detriment to the category. Another thing that's going on at retail, and this is so exciting, innovation is back. Jeff and I were talking yesterday. There were 7,000 new items launched this past quarter that we're tracking. And during the height of the pandemic, not a lot of new items were, coming to light and hitting the shelf. Everyone was really trying to bolster up the supply chain and, focusing on what mattered the most at the time. But hey, I gotta say, innovation is back. 7,000 new items, which is really where we were tracking pre-pandemic. So great to see CPG companies bringing new items to light, and then retailers embracing it and getting them on the shelf. So great to see innovation is back.
And then Simon, right before you move on, I want to just repeat something that you told to me the other day off the recording, is that how we saw during the pandemic, how a lot of brands kind of cut off the tail of their products to focus on production of their core line when there were, social distancing in the factories, there was supply issue. And now rather than necessarily bring all that tail back, they used it to introduce new products and new innovations. So products that could be heroes rather than just the tail end of their old product line.
Totally. I mean, I've used examples where if a line had 15 flavors, during the height of the pandemic, those bottom 5 flavors were cut from production in order to favor line time to the core of the mix. And as things have returned more back to normal, instead of bringing back flavor number 15, we're seeing new and exciting flavors and items coming from those CPG companies. So that's helping feed that innovation. But yeah, great to see that coming on. Which leads to the third big trend, which I simply call moving on. And it's addressing lingering long-term outs and product allocations. I've heard from multiple retailers that they're moving on. They're not waiting for, if it was not available and it hasn't been available, it's off the shelf. They're taking the space back and they're using it to feed, to support that innovation. Now that the new items are coming back, they might not be dealing with those product allocations from some of the CPG companies, and that they're really focusing on supporting that innovation. And that's good to see too, because empty shelves, empty doors, out of stocks doesn't help anybody out there. And those are really the three big trends. And to help support that, if you go to the next slide, what we're doing here at Spins is we're looking for ways to help embrace that innovation and help our exclusive retailers maintain some nice, clear differentiation in the market. So recently, we've introduced what we're calling retail intelligence, which introduces some proprietary